Díomh agus Faltarás Guji Irish language teacher is Misha Breach. And today what I'm going to do is we're going to start right back at the beginning, which is the letters of the alphabet in Irish. So I'm going to go through the letters of the alphabet and how to pronounce them. So it may help those of you who are total beginners and want to maybe try and figure out the sounds so that if you're reading something in Irish, it'll help you with the pronunciation. Okay, so there are not as many letters in the Irish alphabet as there are in the English alphabet, for example. So as we go through them, I will tell you what they are and how to pronounce them. Okay, so the first one. Now, we say A in English, but in Irish it's pronounced A. Now, sometimes you'll hear people pronounce it A in English as well, and that is how we pronounce it in Irish, A. Okay, now, the A is also seen as an A fada, and this little stroke on the top, this little acute accent, is called a fada. So that is the A fada, or the A fada, and we pronounce it O, O. Okay, so then we move on to B, and that is just pronounced B, B. However, we also then will see the B with a H after it, and that is pronounced as a V sound or a W sound. So that would be pronounced V or W. So you might recognize this combination of letters in people's names, girls' names, for example, like Maeve in the Irish spelling ends in a BH because that is our V sound. But you will also hear that combination of letters pronounced W, like a W sound. Okay. The C in Irish. The C in Irish is always a hard C, so it's a K sound. It's never going to be a S sound. It's a K sound, so it's a hard C. And again, sometimes you're going to see it with a H after it, and that is going to be pronounced Ch, Ch. So it's like not very harsh, but it is there. So it's Ch, Ch. It's a slight H sound after it. Then we move on to D. Now D is going to be pronounced D or J. And I'll come back to that. D or J. And when we have a H after it, it is going to be pronounced Y, Y. Like a sort of like a Y sound, Y. Okay, our E. Our E is pronounced and then we have the E fada, and that's pronounced A, A. So if you were to write, if you think of a boy's name, Shay, in Irish, that would be S, E fada. That would be the sound of it, A, A. We move on to F, and F is just pronounced F. Now, FH, that actually completely silences the F sound altogether. So this is actually not going to have a sound at all. If you see this combination of letters together, you're not going to pronounce the F and you're not going to pronounce the H, okay? You'll only ever see this in context of more letters coming with it, so you need to look at the letters that come after this. This combination, totally silent. Okay. G is pronounced G. Again, it's a hard G. GH. Okay, so this sound is R, 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 R. It's kind of like a G, but it's softened. R, R. Okay, so it's similar to the C, the hard C sound, K, only it's softer because it's a G sound, R. Okay, H. Now you are going to see the H's in Irish, and there are some words that do begin with H, and it's just pronounced H, H. So for example, hat is Fata. So you will hear it. Okay. I is pronounced I. I. And then the I fada is pronounced E. E. Okay. Now, we do not have a J in Irish. There is no J in Irish. We make up the J sound using a D. Do you remember when we said the D would be pronounced D or J? That's where we get our J sound. Now, there are a few words that have slipped in to the Irish dictionary, I suppose, that begin with a J. And they are, for example, you might have the word for job being spelled jab, okay, and it has slipped in. But traditionally, it's not there, and there's not many words that actually you will see beginning with J in Irish. So, K, we don't have a K in Irish. Okay, remember we have our K sound coming from our C, K. Okay, now let's move on to L. Now L is going to be pronounced L or L. So it's slightly different. L as in la 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 and L. So I'm going to come back to the differences in these sounds, but just remember that L is another letter like D that's going to have two sounds, L and Y. Okay? Now, M. So again, if you think of a name, Maeve, M, it's exactly the same sound. Now, then we have MH. MH is pronounced the, like a V. So if you think of an Irish spelling of a girl's name, for example, like Niamh, it's going to end in MH and it's a V sound, Niamh, the for MH. Okay, then we have N, which is N, and sometimes you'll hear that as a N or N, and again, I will come back to that. Okay, O is O, just like O, because when we put the fada on it, it becomes O. So when we have O without the fada, it's shorter. It's just like O. Okay, so it's quite subtle. All right, now P, or P. It's a letter I'll come back to, P or P. With a PH, it's an F sound, F, as in exactly like in English, Phil or Philip, F. Okay, Q. We don't have a Q in the Irish alphabet. Remember the sound of Q is like K, and we make up that sound with the hard C, K. So we don't have a Q in Irish. Or, it's just an or sound. S is just an S sound. Yeah. Or you might hear it as a sh sound. So again, S would be like an S sound or a sh sound. Letter I will come back to. Now, if you see S and H coming together, I know it looks like sh in English, but how we pronounce that in English is h. The S gets completely silenced and it becomes just a h sound. So if you think of the Scottish name Hamish, it comes from the Irish name Seamus. So Hamish. Okay, so that's the sound when you see S and H together. It just becomes h. Okay, T. is, again, we can have t or ch. T or ch. It's another letter I'm going to come back to explain. When we have th come together, it becomes h. We lose the sound of the t and it just becomes h. Okay. U. The U sound is let me see now. The U sound is t, because this is what we pronounce the U fada as oo, oo. So it's oo. Okay, so it's just shorter. Okay. Then we don't have a V sound because you'll see that some of the letters in here make up the V sound. So we don't have a V. We do have a V sound, but we don't have the letter V. Again, there's a few words that have slipped in to the dictionary that begin with V, and they're kind of based on words like, for example, van, and you will see that that has slipped in. But traditionally, it's not in the alphabet because we make up the sound of the V from other letters that do exist. Okay, so I'm going to take that one out. Okay, again, W, we don't have it in the Irish language alphabet because we make up the W sounds from a mixture of other letters in this bunch. Okay, X, we don't have in the Irish alphabet. So the sound of an X, again, is made up from our sort of our K, our C sounds in here, our hard sounds in here. So Y, we don't have a Y in the Irish language. It's made up from using a combination of letters in here. So the Irish for yogurt is yogurt, but we don't spell it with a Y. We spell it with an I-O fada. O. And when we put those together, it gives us a Y sound. So that's just to give you an example. Okay, zoo, Z for zoo. So Z is another letter we don't have in the Irish language. Traditionally, it has slipped in for a few little words here and there, like zoo is Z-U fada, which I happen to have in my hand. However, it's not traditionally there. We make up that Z sound from our combination of letters in here, usually with an S, okay? So that's just to give you an idea of the alphabet. Now, in the next video, I will explain the different consonants when they have a different sound. So for example, we started off with D, which is going to sound like D or J. We had L, which is going to sound like L or L. And we had T, which was going to sound like T or Ch. We had S, which is going to sound like S or sh. And we also had N, which was going to sound like N or N. So I will come back to those in the next lesson so you can see why they behave like that, or when they behave like that, when they sound like that. Okay, so that's just to get you started, and I will put up a summary of the letters just so you have them. The letters that we don't have in the alphabet in this pile are going to be marked in red on the phrase card that I put up there. Okay, so I hope you get something out of that and that it will start you off on your pronunciation when you see a word in Irish. Okay, that's great. Slán go fóill.